Welcome to the Gus Alva Perspective, a videocast that is aimed at embracing abundance and gratitude over the mindset of fear and scarcity. The topic that I'd like to touch on today is, do you allow others to control your pace? Now, you're probably going to think, what exactly is he talking about with this, right? It's interesting. Do you sometimes feel like you're doing an endeavor based on somebody else's tempo instead of your own? The reason that I thought I'd touch on this topic is that recently I was actually being taught some boxing moves, and it reminded me of my previous experience having learned to do Krav Maga. When you're sparring with an opponent, the opponent can sometimes actually make you work at their tempo, not yours, and you will become easily fatigued, which basically means that this can be a taxing situation. When allowed to follow your rhythm, you have control over what you do. When you're following somebody else's rhythm, you may much prematurely gas out, and that could lead to disastrous outcomes, particularly if you're involved with a sparring situation or some sort of a pugilistic or boxing endeavor. So the hope is that this video cast will mimic that which is seen in boxing, where one can, while sparring or in a match, have the adversary control one's pace. We don't want to do that. Not allowing the opponent through physical or imagined endeavors to dictate the rhythm of a match is essential for success. So, what I'd like to go through here is maybe some potential strategies that might help us maintain control over our pace, and that pace not being usurped or taken over by somebody else. Now, the following suggestions are based on the boxing example that I gave, but you'll see where they become so important. Now, when we maintain mental discipline by staying focused on our game plan and our strategy to do whatever it is that we do, regardless of what our opponent might do, meaning the task that we have set before us, or truly a physical adversary, well, we'll be able to maintain that nice discipline and stick to our game plan. And by sticking to our plan, we'll have a clear strategy as to what is critical to do, whether it be sort of being aggressive or defensive or counterattacking, will help us stay committed to whatever plan it is that we have through our match. Now, when doing an endeavor like boxing or martial arts, controlling the distance is really important. That's tied into footwork or optimal range where you're striking at somebody else, right? And akin to controlling our proximity to what needs to be accomplished and done, well, that also ties into whatever endeavor it is that we're involved with. In a match, you can vary your speed and timing, and ultimately that will help along the lines of mixing up the tempo of punches and movements and keeping others guessing and not establishing a rhythm over you is one great strategy over being able to maintain your own pace. Speeding up or slowing down, but working toward our goal in a steady manner is ideal. And by the way, this is something that carries over to whatever it is that we're doing, not just this silly example of boxing. But if we are sticking to this example of boxing, you can feint and you can fake. And by doing that, you're disrupting your opponent's timing and rhythm, which misleads them into reacting prematurely. One doesn't need to be direct to get to where one needs to be. And keeping people guessing is one good way of actually being able to assure that whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish will actually get done. Another very important thing is conditioning and endurance. There's no way that you'd be able to last a match unless you're in your most excellent conditioning. This is critical. And this, by the way, carries over to whatever endeavor that we're doing. If we're prepared and we have conditioned our minds or our physical state, then we'll obviously be well prepared to do whatever it is that we need to do. Countering effectively is a very important thing, right? So if somebody strikes, a counter strike is always going to be critical. And the same thing applies. All of a sudden an action occurs and there's going to be a reaction from us. But the other important thing is that we shouldn't always just be reactionary. We should be actually actionary in nature. Staying relaxed and calm, a very important thing. This helps execute your game plan effectively. And by the way, this carries over to life in so many different ways. When we panic and we lose control over whatever it is that we're doing because we're not staying relaxed and calm, that's going to create disaster. Sometimes in boxing or in martial arts, you can clinch. And by clinching, you can reset, right? If the pace is becoming too intense, that lets you know that you need a bit of a breather. And the best way to do that is by clenching somebody or doing something along those lines. And as we made mention, since we're utilizing boxing as an example of this, if we need to take a pause with whatever it is that we're doing and then reapproach it, then that's not a bad idea. Studying and analyzing opponents is very important. When we understand our opponent's patterns or tendencies or their preferred pace, well, now we will actually be better prepared to not allow them to take over the tempo that we are trying to develop for ourselves. And remember, an abundance and gratitude mindset is in implementing all of these strategies that we just described so that we can assert control over the pace of any given match, physical, mental, or otherwise, preventing our opponent, and that's not just a physical individual, but maybe, a task that we have before ourselves, from dictating the rhythm, giving ourselves the best opportunity for success, and then subsequently landing on that successful overture. Although silly, taking a look at this comparison with boxing or the pugilistic arts or martial arts as far as they go, we should never allow a situation to dictate the pace of whatever it is that we're doing. We should always be in control, and our gratitude and abundance mindset will allow us through these suggestions to be able to do just that. I thank you for joining us on the Gus Alva Perspective on this topic of not allowing others to dictate the pace that we should hold for ourselves. Thank you very much for joining us.